soldier, we love you. Yeah, brave soldier, we love you.
We finally have some good news to report. It was negative for so many months, but we have some good news. And that is that a federal judge in Tacoma has imposed a stay on any future court-martial on the basis of the double jeopardy issue that we raised repeatedly at every level in the military court system. So the interesting thing is that despite the negativity over the last year or two regarding the future of habeas corpus, the writ of habeas corpus, it's on the basis of habeas corpus that we are in federal court and that we got a stay imposed, and that the federal judge in Tacoma saw merit in the argument and ordered the Army to stop all of its proceedings while he's reviewing the case. So that's where it is right now. We've gotten an extension of the stay because he saw that the argument had merit, and he made a finding specifically that the argument has merit, which is important so that if it should come to pass that we have to appeal to the Ninth Circuit, with the judge already having made a finding that the argument has merit, that generally should mean that the stay will be continued even as it gets reviewed at the higher court levels. So that's really positive. Finally, I get a lot of people fussing over me about how hard this must be. And what I want to say is being the lawyer is the easy part. Being Aaron Watada and taking the stand that he has taken is by far the most difficult part. So we owe him a vote of thanks and a round of applause.
Soldier, we love you. Yeah, brave soldier, we love you.
I'm so depressed and confused all the time. It's like I don't care about anything anymore. All I want to do is watch Fox News all day. I feel like I don't even know what's going on around me.
If you are experiencing symptoms like these, you could be suffering from corporate fasciitis. Corporate fasciitis is a disorder that affects millions of Americans each year. You are not alone.
Doctor, what causes this sickness?
Corporate fasciitis is an MTD. It's a media-transmitted disease. Let's take a look. First of all, let's open up the mouth. Say ah.
Ah.
Good. Any other symptoms?
I feel afraid all the time.
You see, as mainstream media enters your head, the misinformation releases a contagion. This contagion triggers a process similar to brainwashing. This disorder, which spreads throughout the central nervous system and eventually throughout the entire body, causes extreme cynicism and social lethargy.
So my television's poisoning me.
Not just your television, unfortunately, but also the radio and print media.
So what can I do, doctor?
Well, fortunately for you, there's an easy solution. What you need is Indymedia Presents. Why, with a weekly dose of independent media from PepperSpray Productions, you can be back to your old self again, enjoying life, and most importantly, thinking for yourself.
Now I feel hopeful again, and I can take an active part in my community and the world around me. Thanks, Indymedia Presents.
Warning, regular ingestion of independent media may cause increased consciousness, acute political awareness, counter-hegemonic activity, enlarged cranial capacity, excessive hopefulness, and bloated critical thinking abilities. Ask your doctor if Indymedia Presents is right for you.
I was told that I have exactly 3 minutes and I got to get out of the way of the dinner. So I want to say that this organization, as far as I'm concerned, is focused on the most important issue that faces our society. Probably faces our whole, what's going on in the universe. My biggest fear is that in the next 15 months, actually it's 454 days before we get rid of him, George Bush is going to pull the trigger on Iran. I have thought that for more than a year and a half. And when you hear the drum beat of Iraq, Iran, Hussein, 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 Iraq, Iraq, you recognize it when you hear Iran, 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 Tehran, Tehran, Tehran. It's the drum beats of a war. And the belief that this can be done from 30,000 feet, and you know that bomber that was flying over the United States the other day loaded with Trident nuclear-tipped missiles? You ask yourself, what was that all about? Or what was it all about when the raid went in to Syria, and the United States won't talk about it, and Syria won't talk about it, and Israel, nobody will talk about it. You know that this country is in real danger because we have a group in Washington, D.C. that is willing to do anything to maintain control not only of this country, but of the whole world's oil reserves and everything else. And it is among the most dangerous times, and this organization and its voice is very important. The impact that you can have on members of Congress and on the whole process is extremely important. I said to Helen Caldicott, "What are you doing here tonight?" She said, "Well, I can't give up yet." Well, neither can I. Thank you very much.
The new Ken Burns series on World War II has generated considerable interest in what many have felt was the last good war. But there are important stories and lessons overlooked by the PBS series. Here is one of them.
December 7th, 1941. A day of infamy, all right. But perhaps not the way the latest big screen flag waver would have you believe.
My name is Captain O'Kelly McCluskey. I'm a WW2 vet, a DAV, Disabled American Veteran.
There is considerable evidence that the sneak attack on Pearl Harbor was not a surprise at all.
Why am I speaking to these issues? Well, I've got a right to speak to these issues. I'm 75, I've seen an awful lot. So here's where I'm coming from.
There is evidence that the U.S. knew the attack was going to happen and allowed it for political reasons. If this is true, then the more than 3,000 U.S. service people killed or wounded that day were sent to their graves as much by the U.S. government as by the Japanese Zeros. We can't recommend seeing the movie Pearl Harbor because it sucks. But since it resurrects the mythology that justified a war and period of imperialist expansion, which ultimately led the U.S. to Korea, Vietnam, and countless lesser interventions, it is important for the people's media to counter the right-wing political effects of movies like Pearl Harbor. This is war in the superstructure, the battle of summation. So while the stirring music swells to mainline the unsuspecting with uncut patriotism, we bring you a different story. Begins with Exhibit A, the banner headline in the Pearl Harbor Sunday newspaper, 1 week before the so-called surprise attack.
This is the Honolulu Advertiser, November 30th, 1 week before Pearl Harbor, Sunday before Pearl Harbor. Sunday morning, November 30th, 1941. Japanese may strike over the weekend. Roosevelt knew where the Japanese fleet was. So I was sitting in front of the radio and listening to something, and there was a lot of excitement in our house. The Japanese had just attacked Pearl Harbor. I tried to sign up when I was 17 and a half, and I wanted to get in the Marine Corps. My brother was already in. The Hogan kids from next door were both dead. My cousin, Johnny McKeon, and I were we couldn't wait. He was a few months older than I was. So anyhow, we went down to sign up, and I signed up to be a combat air crewman in the Navy. And so Roosevelt, knowing full well that the American public would never support engaging in a war with Japan. You got to remember that, I mean, just a couple of years prior to that, the American public had, on the vote on whether to set the draft in motion, it won by one vote. That's how close it was. I mean, that's how divided the nation was. We'd seen World War I. Our fathers, my wife's father, and everything else, they'd come back. And they had their stories to tell. And they weren't about to go into another European war about nothing. So Roosevelt, he sat there as an autocrat and says, this is what's going to happen. He set up a trap. And the old ships that they were just sacrificed, and 3,000 men. Hey, these are living human beings.
We have to do more. Does anyone think that victory is possible without facing danger?
Well, you guys were lucky. You know, you fought in a just war, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'll tell you something. Now I'm 75. I'm beginning to know what really happened at Pearl Harbor. But Roosevelt knew, and they also knew the Japanese fleet was 200 miles north of Pearl Harbor. Now, you got to recognize that most of the battleships that were at Pearl Harbor were World War I type battleships. The Japanese had the most modern fleet that existed at that time, so they had all this very sophisticated, high battle wagons that had an ability to lob a shell much further than we did.
In times like these, we all need to be reminded who we truly are.
Warning of Japanese aggressive movement.
There was a man on who was a newsman, and he told about how the secretary, the foreign secretary at that time, who wasn't, I can't think of his name at this minute, but Secretary of State Cordell Hull, that's who it was that I heard tell it, that the newsman said that he met with Cordell Hull out on the park bench, and Hull told him that was going to take place. So that's who it was. He came to this man, and he was outside the loop with FDR. And he came to this newsman, met him on a park bench in Washington, D.C., like they're always doing. Just you'd like to go to one of those park benches and wire it, you know. And he told this newsman about the fact that this attack was going to take place in Pearl Harbor. So the newsman sent a message to the newspaper in Honolulu. This is the Honolulu Advertiser, November 30th, 1 week before Pearl Harbor, Sunday before Pearl Harbor. Sunday morning, November 30th, 1941. Japanese may strike over the weekend. The actual documents, you can read them yourself. So this newsman sent the story out to Pearl Harbor, and that's how it made the paper. Now, how I got this copy of the paper is so I saw this documentary that we're talking about. The newsman was telling about this is how he got the story and what he did and what have you. So I knew that the story existed And so I then started trying to get my children all being librarians. I tried to get a copy of the newspaper. So eventually I did. I got the copy.
This case does not stop there. There is more evidence.
The Day of Deceit. This is written by a man named Robert B. Stinnett.
A date which will live in infamy.
Stinnett served in the United States Navy under Lieutenant George Bush from 1942 to 1946, where he earned 10 battle stars and Presidential Unit Citation. He worked as a photographer and journalist at the Oakland Tribune until 1986, after which he resigned as a full-time employee to devote himself to this book.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the Empire of Japan.
Says Pearl Harbor was not an accident, a mere failure of American intelligence, or a brilliant Japanese military coup. It was the result of a carefully orchestrated design, initiated at the highest levels. That means that we all know those are code words meaning the President of the United States, FDR, my hero. And up until recently. I mean, I can't hardly believe how we all went in. I mean, couldn't wait to get in, to die for the United States. I didn't want to kill anybody, but I was willing to get in there and do my part. Initiated the highest levels of our government. According to a key memorandum, 8 steps were taken to make sure we would enter the war by this means. Pearl Harbor was the only way leading officials felt to galvanize the reluctant American public into action.
We are at war.
Roosevelt created a panel, concluded that we had no advance warning. And of course, that's the same as the Warren Commission. You know? This man Stinnett went through all these documents, and what he's done is he's created a book. This first review is by Gore Vidal. He says, many of us who are veterans of World War II Pacific Theater operations have always suspected that the December 7th, 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was deliberately provoked. A half-century later, Robert Stinnett has come up with most of the smoking guns. Day of Deceit shows that the famous surprise attack was no surprise to our war-minded rulers. That 3,000 American military men were killed and wounded one Sunday morning in Hawaii were, to our rulers and their present avatars, a small price to pay for that global empire over which we now so ineptly preside. I mean, talking about, you know, what's happening with Bush and what's happened with Clinton, the one-party system that we had, the Democrats, the corporate party system.
Tell that to the soldiers who today are hitting hard in the far waters of the Pacific.
The last that anybody ever heard of McKean, his plane went down off Hangzhou, China. And I planted a Empress of China tree, and it's just beginning, the first blooms are coming out in my yard. I look at it right off my deck, and I think it's McKean. This is the one reason I get mad as hell at Roosevelt, because he suckered us into that war. You know? And we've all been thinking McKean died for something. The Hogan kids died for something and everything. and all the friends that I had who were wounded, or I mean, if not physically wounded in battle, they were wounded in their heads for things that they did or participated in or saw or what have you. And those scars never go away. And so, to me, anybody that's a veteran that has had any of these experiences needs to, number one, you know, they owe it to themselves to find out whether it's, I mean, is Stinnett right? Is what he's saying right? And the old ships that they were just sacrificed, and 3,000 men.
Tell that to the Marines.
It's even more important than that, because what it boils down to is we thought we had a republic. I mean, the most crucial thing about it is the fact that this government that is supposed to be of laws and not of men, and is supposed to be a republic, where if you wanted to go to war, you had to get the Congress of the United States to declare a war.
Tell that to the Marines.
We thought we had a republic. Well, you know, if nothing else, if what I'm saying causes people to start looking into some of these things, if you'll just read Day of the Sea, 3,000 men, we thought we had a republic. Well, where's the Firestone debate?
What brings you here to Westlake Mall?
Well, I'm most upset about the fact that there are some people who are supposedly leading our country who don't believe in me. Clearly they don't when they say they do.
Would you say historically that when you smashed all the vendors at the synagogue, that was your first statement against the WTO and globalization?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
I think so too. And so what sort of work have you been doing globally? Because I haven't seen much presence of you in these war times.
Appealing to people's hearts as best I can. Some people claim to have my message figured out, and they're using it to justify killing other people.
And what about the Rastafarians? So we need it, don't need it?
I'm an open-minded person.
So you're saying you like gay people too?
I have no problem with people who choose to love.
And what about the people with the missiles?
I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Well, thank you, Jesus, for your time.
The pharaohs of our day.
Okay, well, thanks for your help clarifying some issues.
Anytime.
Not in his name.
It is the dawn of the 21st century. Globally, the oppressors are waging a war against the oppressed. The first casualty of war is truth, and the oppressors have big guns. money, power, and a stranglehold on the media. But we can fight back. We have our own weapons: vision, creativity, and Indymedia. Indymedia was born in the clouds of tear gas that filled the streets of Seattle in 1999. It has since grown to a network of over 120 media centres worldwide. Indymedia's stories come out of the trenches, from the mouths of the frontline fighters. They come from those who resist and are rising up. They come from you.
We have to fight, although we have to cry.
The spirit shouldn't come from money.
Find out what's really going on. Break through the corporate veil.
They will not tell our story well. They will not. Fuck the corporate media.
Tell your story, yourself, through Indymedia. On the web, with video, radio or print. Choose your weapon and act. Empower yourself and others. Fight for truth.
Eventually the truth, even though it's beaten down and covered up, it'll rise to the top.
Indymedia, because corporate media is always out of focus.
The power comes from the people, from you and I, from the bottom up.
Do